to please welcome. This is Heroic Productions' series of virtual events where we invite interesting people who are doing really interesting things to our virtual stage. We are a corporate event production company, and we've been helping our corporate clients execute world-class events for the past 20 plus years. So we're happy to bring this series of events to you as well. Today, we get to talk with Debbie Schwake, who is the CEO of the Pedowitz Group. Debbie, welcome. Welcome to the Please Welcome stage.
Hi, Kitty. And I have to really quickly make a slight correction.
Okay.
Because my CEO might be watching. I'm actually the Chief Marketing Officer of the Pedowitz Group. So
thank you.
I love the promotion you just gave me, but technically I'm the CMO.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that correction. So you joined us here in Studio 15 on, I think it was October 10th. We hosted the Marketers Community event here, and your session was called Mastering Chaos, and your title is Master of Chaos, which I absolutely love.
So it's funny that you say that because that's a pretty big title. And what I want to say, Kitty, is I am a deep investigator of people. Like I study people and humans. I've been a marketer my whole career. And so I think during this time when everybody's really feeling like what's going on and what is all this chaos about, I found myself in a state of needing to understand. So in that, pulling that together, I did some investigation on my own. I took a step back to really think about what's going on in the market right now, what's going on with humans, and how is that affecting what we're doing as a marketing community.
Okay. And I think, one of the reasons why we wanted to have this second conversation with you is because being in the meeting and event space, it is a space where if you talk to meeting planners, if you talk to the meetings and events team, there can be a tremendous amount of chaos around the events that are produced, just simply because there are so many details, so many components to manage. So we thought that this would be really, really relevant to our audience, our broad audience of meetings and events professionals and marketers, and of course, corporate leaders. So thank you for spending some time with us today to talk a little bit more about it. Let's start with understanding a bit more about the Pedowitz Group and the work that you and your team do.
Yeah, thanks, Kitty. So the Pedowitz Group is a professional services company for marketing. And so obviously we're marketers for marketing, and our team helps marketing departments orient around revenue. And I always say my goal in life is to bring credibility to the marketing seat, right? So orienting around revenue and being strategically important to the organization is really our primary focus.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for the work that you do. As someone who has been in marketing and business development my whole career, I know the challenges that exist with that. This came up in conversation this morning on our Monday sales and marketing team meeting. So your presentation, Mastering Chaos, is all about helping people and organizations function better when the world around us is constantly changing. And I loved the analogy that you shared. You talked about the roundabout. Can you share that with our listeners?
So I'm a marketer at heart, and I like to tell stories, and connecting something to something chaotic that people understand. It helps us kind of formulate where these foundations are. So I talked about the roundabout as being this. There are so many of them in the Twin Cities. I'm not sure how many more we're going to get. There's a lot of roundabouts. But quite frankly, the roundabout is an interesting dynamic in that it's circular in its nature. And if you imagine in this situation, it has 4 exits and on-ramps. And each of them leads to a very different direction and has different characteristics about them, but they're all interrelated. And as I was kind of putting together this research around chaos and the disruption in marketing, especially right now, I couldn't stop thinking about a roundabout, because if you don't plan for which exit you're getting off on, you end up in circles, right? And I find that, and we'll get to this by the end of our discussion today, but I find that if you don't plan for it, if you don't have a plan in general, you're not thinking in terms of the whole picture, the holistic foundation. And so each four of these foundations that are disrupted right now are related and required, kind of when you want to take that step back and really think more deeply about the problems that you're trying to solve, rather than hitting the brakes and trying to get off that off ramp really quickly and causing a big ruckus. So
Right. Yes, you're right. These roundabouts are showing up everywhere,
everywhere.
even where we least expect it. Really, another roundabout. Yeah, I like the way I like the analogy here. Definitely, it's easy to think about how we can apply that across so many areas of our lives. You have to plan for what's next, because sometimes we do need to make quick decisions, but oftentimes if you're not planning, signaling, doing it, with other people around you in mind, then we can have a bad outcome. So you talked about your presentation really dug into 4 critical areas of identification, like where this disruption is happening in this modern world that we live in today. And I think it would be helpful for our audience to lay those out for us. I also should mention here, I usually do this at the beginning, for those of you who are tuning in, either on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, if you have questions, please drop those into the comments. We will pick those up. We try to infuse those into the conversation here as well. So first of all, welcome, and please participate in the conversation. So Debbie, let's hear about those 4 critical areas.
Yeah, let's start with there's 4. So generation, there's team dynamics, there's consumer behavior, and leadership are the 4 foundations that I refer to when I'm talking about what's disrupted right now. And I want to start, Kitty, with generation, because it's one we love to talk about. There's a lot of discussion about the different generations right now. And I think if we can agree that each generation has characteristics and behaviors that sort of unite them and make them different from one another, whether you're on the cusp of them or you buy into all of it or not. They definitely have these behaviors that we refer to. And so really in this time, especially with leaders and businesses right now, we're talking about 3. We're talking about Gen X, Millennials, and Gen Z. And quite frankly, they couldn't be more different from one another. So if you think about us Gen Xers, and I refer to myself here because I'm a Gen Xer, we were the generation of value and convenience, and we wanted a lot for our money. We were in a hurry. We had a lot going on. We needed to make sure things could happen quickly. Millennials, as a sort of different dynamic, millennials are tech-driven consumers. So they grew up with tech, more tech than we did. But the really interesting thing about millennials that we refer to is that millennials really value experience over possession. And I always say, how we know that is try to give your millennial children some of your collectibles. They don't want any of it. They want the experiences. They don't want the possessions.
Yeah.
And Gen Z, these are digitally native. They grew up with tech. They are very mobile, and they're digitally social. So that that's a little bit of something that Gen Xers have a hard time understanding is, what does it mean to be digitally social? They're very social creatures, and they always have their social network with them on their phone or in person. So very social, very authentic. They value a lot of that interaction. And so what this means, Kitty, is that as a society, the way that we consume information, the way that we care to interact is very different and changing. And quite frankly, what's happening in our workplaces is that millennials are 75% of the workforce right now. That's significant when you think about how we communicate, how we work together, how we think, how we solve problems. All of those things are sort of disrupted at the moment.
Wow. I did not realize that it was that percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up because I don't know that there's a statistic out there. Every time I mention this, I make a mental note to go and do the research on it to be able to back this up. But I'm quite certain that it is proven that the most successful organizations, companies, corporations have a wide range mix between all of those generations, from the 20 somethings all the way on up, because they each bring something really significant to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And
we
the
tend
conversations.
we tend to paste our values on other people. So part of that, taking a step back from it, is to really think about, how the behaviors of this generations or the generations that you're dealing with are so much different than your own. And how do we embrace that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay. So that's generational.
Mm-hmm. Second one is team dynamics. And team dynamics is something that's top of mind for so many people right now. And, Kitty, we're tired of hearing about the pandemic. I get it. But during the pandemic, we collectively grieved. There were 2.6 billion people that were on lockdown. 81% of businesses were fully or partially closed. And when jobs are at risk like that, when things like that happen and we're starting to worry and grieve and be afraid together, typically people get really productive. Teams will get really productive because they don't want to be on the list, right? But it's interesting that something very different happened. And that was, as team members, we took our power back and people resigned, like in great numbers. They decided that they had had enough of unsustainable workloads and they wanted to do something about it. So they took that power back and they decided to take control of their lives. And a phrase that I've heard is, work is what you do, not where you sit. And so if you go back to those generational differences, we really have generations of people that are questioning the norms that we've adopted. Why 8 to 5? I often say, is that the same rule? Why do we say 8 to 5 is the gold standard for our workday? If I can get it done in, 4 hours, why can't I do it in 4 hours?
Right.
So,
well, let me ask a question here. And there are many who would say, well, 8 to 5 is too short of a day. So they'd be like, oh, wait, it's 5 o'clock. Oh, you're leaving? That's, yeah. So some would say 8 to 5 isn't long enough for a work day.
And so you have this difference in the Gen Xers that have worked those long hours, have understood that that's how you get ahead, how you get your work done, how you show up, how you become a leader. And you've got Gen Zs and millennials that are saying, no, actually, I'm going to do something about this work-life balance. I'm going to actually not do that. I don't want to look and live like my parents did. Yeah. And so it's created this flip where employers now need to be loyal to their employees. It's a complete difference. Tiffany Bova is an author and an executive that I admire. And she's written a book called The Experience Mindset. And in it, she says, we're in the people business. And I think that look back to actually considering humans for humans' sake is good for us as a society.
Yes, very good. We agree here at Heroic that we don't like to talk about the pandemic anymore. It's almost like we've created, instead of a swear jar, we have a mentioning the pandemic jar, because we have moved on, definitely. But yet, you're right, these shifts that have happened because of what we went through have been very, very interesting. It will be interesting to see where it goes from here. There were conversations long before the pandemic. There were conversations. People would every once in a while raise the question, can we go to a 4-day work week? And then it would die down. And then it would come up again. And here it is. It's back again. It's that question is being raised again. So definitely more to come on that. Consumer.
Oh my goodness. If you think that's not enough, consumer. And as marketers, we've always chased consumers. That's what our job is. They're always a step ahead of us. But interestingly, right now, and why I included it in chaos is that in this generation, in this time where we have so much tech, products really are at parity. You can get the same exact thing from 82 different people online at the touch of a button. And quite frankly, you can't talk about consumer behavior without talking about Amazon. 3 clicks, no more than 2 days for a delivery, and a nearly frictionless experience. And while most companies cannot emulate the Amazon engine that's just not possible for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
There is something about no more friction that consumers desire that we have to think about as leaders and businesses, right? And so I often say that, take your customer's experience, see what that's like. But there's also another interesting dynamic going on with the generations, and that is, if we go back to talking about millennials are 50% more likely to recommend a product or service to their friends, and their friends are buying it. In fact, they have this platform of 4.7 billion users on social media. And you enter this new dynamic, which is influencers are now carrying brands.
Mm-hmm.
And 56% of young Americans buy from people that they follow. TikTok made me buy it as a real thing.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you have all new platforms, all new channels, all new modes of communication, and this desire for instant gratification that has never been before. And so companies are sitting back and saying, like, what do I do with this? I'll never be the Amazon engine. How do I compete in this environment? And it's not just B2C, it's a B2B play as well, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The word consumer, in my marketing career, I've always tried to swap out that word for just people.
I love that.
And business to business or business to consumer, it's all people to people. We make the same sort of decisions, or we make decisions in the same way, whether we're making a decision for our company or we're making a decision at home. We're human beings. We go through the same thought process to make decisions. So,
For sure.
one more.
Leadership. Yes, leadership. So my favorite thing that leaders do, and I likely do the same thing, is that when things are in chaos and everything is, we're under so much pressure, we tend to push that pressure down on our teams. And so just take a step back from that for a second. Leadership tenure is really short. I know for marketers, they say, between 2 and 4 years for a CMO. For most leadership positions, it's very short. It's less than 5 years. And these are the people that are writing the 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's a lot of disruption at your leadership level, new leaders come in, they change strategy, they do all the new leader stuff that they do, and it causes a lot of disruption within the organization. But if you look at today, soft demand, retention issues, there's new tech. Anybody heard of AI? There's team dynamics, there's talent shortages, and the recession fear alone is stifling. And so leaders are under so much pressure, and they're pushing that down on their teams. And when they do that, they tend to get really micromanagey. Is that a word? I just made it up.
Sure. Yeah.
They like to micromanage, right? And get really into the game. It's like a coach knowing they can win the game if they just go in and play. But the truth is, when you put that kind of pressure on your team, you inhibit your team's ability to make good decisions, because that stress and pressure literally limits the set of choices that you have to make, the set of options you have to take, because you're feeling under pressure. Mm-hmm. And I think, Kitty, this is where that roundabout analogy comes back full force. And that is, if you're not able to make a decision by taking a step back and looking at the big map, you're making it on the fly, and it's just not a good decision. It's just not a good position to be in.
Yeah.
So we have to, as leaders, kind of understand the pressure that we're feeling, and are we passing that on, or are we trusting our team
Mm-hmm.
to do what they're expert at, right?
Right. Right.
Mhm,
Which
mhm,
is sometimes easier said than done. That's a tough thing to do.
mhm,
So these are the four critical areas that we need to really look at where we can identify there's disruption
mhm,
here. Once we do that, and that takes some time and some work, right? So let's say you're a leadership team and you've just taken in this presentation, and now these concepts. It's important to sit down as a leadership team and talk about those components and
mhm.
talk about, so how are these things affecting our business? Is that your recommendation?
Absolutely, Kitty. And reframe is the word that I use when it comes to this whole discussion. Because honestly, if you're just looking at one of the forces, so let's just look at generations. Are we talking in the right language to the right people at the right time? And it's almost a bigger step back from that. What are those preferences that we need to consider? Not do we need a TikTok strategy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where do they get information? How do they consume information? How do they want to be included? How do they want to interact and be part of your organization? All of those things from a generational perspective, you really have to understand where they're coming from, and quite frankly, rethinking how all of it goes, right? It's okay that they're asking questions. In fact, that's healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and you could come up with some answers that you hadn't thought of. And I never recommend a complete turnaround, right? There's not a black or white here. There's a lot in between the two things. So it's not a complete turn. We're not saying stop working 8 to 5, but have you thought about it?
Yeah. What if?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're just ideas until
Mm-hmm.
you put
Mm-hmm.
something into action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Reframing. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like looking at these things through a different lens,
Mm-hmm.
and just really opening up the conversation and opening up to new ideas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Give us some other tips. So let's say, so we have, your company has gone through the process of sitting down and talking about these four critical areas, identifying, maybe where they're having they're definitely seeing the disruption or feeling the pain of
Mm-hmm.
it. What are some additional recommendations that you would make?
From the team dynamic, Kitty, I recommend taking a step back and reimagining how the work gets done, what work needs to get done, and how it gets done. So it's not always, again, if you're making that decision now outside of the foundation, you might be thinking, I need more people. I need someone that'll work all day. I need, actually take a big step back from that and ask yourself, is there tech that can support that strategy? Will AI help me here? Is it people? Can I use a contractor? I think sometimes we put things at a just one step back from the problem statement. Again, instead of going all the way to the foundation and saying, what is this work we're trying to get done? And how can we go about doing that? And maybe reimagining altogether how that gets done. I think another one that this is critical, and we help our clients do this all the time. Map your customer's journey and take it. How hard is it to do business with you?
Yeah.
My favorite story right now is I heard someone say, I can do a 40-page PowerPoint using AI in 0.2 seconds. And my question is, that's great. Who wants to watch that? No one,
Right.
right?
Yes.
No one. It's still a terrible PowerPoint at the end of the day, and it's still not the way people consume information. So taking a big step back from that and looking like, what does it take to do business with us? What does it take to purchase from us? What does the delivery process look like? What does the experience after look like? All of those things are just taking a step way back into that foundation. And don't forget, what team do I have to help me support this? It's roundabout, it's all related. And what is their generational preferences, and how can we better adapt to who our buyer is from that standpoint?
And the customer journey seems like that's something that you should be doing on a regular basis
Mhm.
as things evolve and change. Service offerings might change. Um, Lots of things change. So how often should a company be doing that?
Mhm. I think all the time. Amazon does it all the time.
Mm,
How they went from, Prime to 2-day delivery to same-day delivery, that happened quickly. It was within a few years because their consumer preferences changed that quickly. People want immediate gratification. And again, I'm not saying everybody can get there, but certainly ask those questions and try to figure out. And you should revisit, because so many times we see people lay down the strategy and think, we've got it, we're good, strategy's set.
yeah.
But revisiting that and taking it now and again, just to see kind of how is that relating to today and to the consumers, and asking your customers, how is
Mhm.
it doing business with us?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Consumer and leadership. Hit a couple
Mm-hmm.
points for there on those two areas.
Yeah, yeah. And from a leadership perspective, Kitty, we often see that you just first trust your team, right? If you're in their game, you're inhibiting, you're stifling their performance. And so you need to make sure that you're not playing the game, like let them play their game. And if it's not the right person in the role, well, that's a whole different conversation, right?
Yes.
But strategy always leads.
Mhm.
And I think revisiting your strategy is as important as revisiting your customer's journey, like frequently. What actually are we trying to achieve, and how are we trying to achieve it? And is it working?
Mhm.
And if it's not working, is it the strategy's problem?
Yep.
Perhaps. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So interesting. And I just, uh, we love hosting the marketer community events here because we get to participate as well. We were in your audience. We were part of the interactive experience as well. And I think we all just really liked how you distilled this down into those four critical areas. It does make it, from a company's perspective, as someone on the leadership team of a company, it makes it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit easier to get your arms around,
Mm-hmm.
how we would actually start to take a look at ourselves and what's happening inside our own culture, and then figuring out what we can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all related, Kitty. It's also important to, again, we're in chaos and disruption. We're all feeling it. We're all wondering what is going on.
Mhm.
Why are none of the strategies and tactics working? And what are we thinking about? And so we tweak and we make all these little turns out on the edge of it. But my suggestion is really just take that big step back and think about how you're oriented, who you're talking to, ask questions, involve people, especially from the different generations. It's fascinating to hear. I have to say, Gen Z are great problem solvers. They're great problem solvers. So,
Wonderful.
mhm.
Wonderful. Um, this has been super helpful. Obviously we wanted to share this with our network. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you and getting to know you better, Debbie. Um, if people want to reach you, if they want to connect with you, what is the best way?
I invite them to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay,
I do look at all of my LinkedIn emails, so please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear
okay,
from you.
wonderful.
Mhm.
Wonderful. And so we will let you get back to your day, Debbie. And again, thank you. From all of us at Heroic Productions, we appreciate you tuning in to our virtual Please Welcome. We produce these monthly, so we don't have our date set yet for November, but know that we will have Please Welcome in November. The best way to make sure that you catch it is make sure that you're following our page on LinkedIn. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. And if you're following those pages, you should get notifications. You can connect with us as well. We are heroic-productions.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. So we would love to have conversations with you as well. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in today, and we'll see you in November.
Thanks, Kitty.
Thank you, Debbie.